The moment everyone feared has finally arrived. Lewis Hamilton lost patience with Ferrari and made statements that will reverberate through the Maranello departments for months to come. After another disappointing performance, this time on British soil, the seven-time world champion was categorical. There are aspects of the current project that definitely should not be carried over into the development for 2026. Is the honeymoon between Hamilton and the traditional Italian team ending prematurely? And the main question, will Ferrari finally see the facts or continue to deny reality? Let's take a detailed look at the events of the British Grand Prix and understand why this race may have marked a definitive turning point in Hamilton's journey with the Italian team. The English driver arrived home with high expectations, considering his 9 previous victories at the circuit and the growing pressure to finally achieve his first podium finish in red. Everyone anticipated that the track where Hamilton demonstrates absolute dominance would be the ideal setting to end this streak of frustration. However, what should have been a golden opportunity turned into a torment in the rain, brutally revealing all the shortcomings of the Italian team's project. The race started in heavy rain, creating the ideal chaos for changes in the final result. While Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri controlled the situation with McLaren, showing that their cars were impeccably adjusted to the adverse circumstances, Hamilton found himself fighting for scraps, battling desperately with Nico Hülkenberg and Lance Stroll for third place. It was an embarrassing situation for a 7-time champion who had already collected so many memorable victories in similar situations. Ferrari's strategic approach once again demonstrated why the team has not yet reached the level of the top forces in the category. Hamilton managed to overtake Stroll and put pressure on Hülkenberg with the determination characteristic of someone who understands the importance of every point. But when it came to the fundamental strategic choices, when everyone switched from intermediate tires to slicks, those responsible for the Italian strategy failed completely. Hülkenberg made his pit stop 1 lap after Hamilton, building up enough of a lead to secure his first podium finish in the category in over 10 years. Hamilton had to settle for 4th place, but the result was only the tip of the iceberg of a much more complex problem. The situation worsened even further. Immediately after leaving the pits during his decisive stop, Hamilton made a mistake that cost him valuable positions, losing his line in the 3rd corner and wasting precious time. But here lies the fundamental aspect that most analyses are overlooking. This mistake was not simply the result of a lack of concentration or psychological tension. Hamilton was devastatingly direct in explaining that the car was uncontrollable. In his words, the Ferrari Model 25 simply rejects wet conditions. The Britain's statements were ruthless and without diplomatic niceties. This car completely hates these conditions. It's the most terrible feeling when you can't lean in and trust that you can rely on the rear stability of the car. The scenario becomes even more worrying when Hamilton uses a perfect comparison to describe the experience. He described the feeling as building a wall and then demolishing it, building a wall and demolishing it again. We are talking about someone who has triumphed 9 times at Silverstone, who knows every corner of the track inside out, who has driven McLaren and Mercedes cars in similar circumstances and has always excelled in the rain. Even so, he stated without hesitation that this was the most complicated car I've ever driven here. This transcends a momentary technical criticism. It represents a desperate warning. However, the issue widens when we examine Ferrari's overall performance. While Hamilton struggled in 4th place, frustrated but still seeking to get the most out of the car, his teammate Charles Leclerc had one of the weakest performances of his career, finishing only 14th. 2 drivers of exceptional caliber, globally recognized for their competence in wet conditions, both completely disoriented with the same car. This is no coincidence. It is concrete proof that something is fundamentally wrong with Ferrari's entire development philosophy. The most striking statement, one that could completely change the team's fate, came after the race. Hamilton not only questioned the current project, but also made it clear that he will meet personally with the engineers responsible for the 2026 development. His words were blunt. abandoning the traditional diplomacy of the sport. There are aspects of this car that cannot be carried over to next year. I may need to meet with the people who are developing the car for next season. To interpret this clearly, Hamilton is saying that if Ferrari does not drastically change its development philosophy, they will repeat the same disastrous mistakes in the future. Hamilton's position is both strategic and bold. He understands that 2026 will be absolutely vital, with new chassis and powertrain regulations coming into force, symbolizing an opportunity for Ferrari to start completely from scratch. But only if they publicly admit that the current direction is fundamentally wrong. And Hamilton, with all his experience from 7 world titles and credibility built up over almost 2 decades in the sport, is using all his political influence to force deep structural changes in the organization. The timing of this statement is neither accidental nor naive. Hamilton still sits 6th in the Drivers' Championship, just 16 points behind Leclerc, but he has already realized that this season is all but lost in terms of any real title contention. So, rather than diplomatically pretending that everything is fine and that results will naturally improve, he is focusing entirely on the future and using all his influence to ensure that 2025 and 2026 are radically different from the current frustration. The question that remains is, will Ferrari really listen this time? Historically, the Italian team has always struggled to accept criticism from drivers, especially when that criticism questions fundamental technical decisions. But this time, the situation is completely different. We are talking about Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion who has absolutely nothing to prove to anyone and who could be retired enjoying his achievements. When a driver of this technical and political caliber says that elements of the car cannot be transferred to the future project, any team that is even remotely serious stops everything and listens with rapt attention. The harsh reality is that Hamilton is doing exactly the job that should be done by Ferrari's own engineers and technical management. He is analyzing information in depth, identifying complex structural problems, and proposing concrete solutions for the future. This demonstrates his impressive level of commitment to the Italian project, but it also exposes the embarrassing lack of clear and competent technical leadership within the team itself. Now consider what is happening behind the scenes at Maranello at this very moment. The engineers know full well that Hamilton does not speak irresponsibly or generate unnecessary controversy. When he says he will meet personally with the development team to discuss every detail of the 2026 project, it means that real and profound changes are inevitably coming. The question that defines Ferrari's future is whether these changes will be radical enough to put the team back in contention for the title, or whether they will be merely superficial adjustments that maintain the frustrating status quo. Hamilton has made it clear that he will not accept mediocrity and that he is fully prepared to tackle structural problems, even if this causes significant internal discomfort. This stance may be exactly the bitter medicine Ferrari needs to finally leave its comfort zone and return to the fight for titles on a consistent basis. The final question remains: will they have the courage to transform absolutely everything that needs to be changed? Or will they continue to repeat the same mistakes that have kept them frustratingly far from the top for so long? Click on the video appearing on your screen, because there I explain how this internal pressure at Ferrari could explode definitively and cause a complete revolution in the Italian team before 2025 even begins.